Episode 140, Nick O'Malley. Nick O'Malley is a singer and songwriter for the Wisconsin leftist punk band, The First Rule. Also, as a resident of Kenosha, he has a first-hand perspective on the event and murders, and yes, they were murders, committed by Kyle Rittenhouse. Please welcome to the show, Nick O'Malley. What's up, everybody? First of all, shout out to everyone who came out to LA this past weekend. It was so awesome to see some familiar faces for the anti-fascist pasta show on home field. I like to say home ice because I'm a hockey guy, but using the words ice in relation to anything, especially in LA, just doesn't feel great right now. So shout out to everyone who came out. It was awesome to see so many friends and familiar faces. The next anti-fascist pasta night is June 5th in New York City, and then Edinburgh Fringe Festival August 6th through 30th. You can get tickets and all information at romplacone.com. And by the way, the Fringe Festival, I'm part of the free Fringe, so there are no tickets. Just show up. And but tickets and information for New York, romplacone.com. Hope to see you out on the road. All right, enjoy today's episode. Oh, and Left It Wall is out now. It is free on both Tubi and it's free on YouTube Movies now. Before you could rent it on YouTube, now it is free with ads. I don't know how all that gets unrolled. The distributor takes care of it. But now you can watch Left It Wall on YouTube for free with ads. So plenty of places to see Left It Wall for free. Please do check it out. All right, now it's official. Enjoy today's episode. Peace. Nick O'Malley of The First Rule. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Nice to meet you. I know we've corresponded online some, and I listen to your music, and so it's nice to put a face to all of it. Nice to put a face to the band camp.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. It's really cool to talk to you.
So, are you from Wisconsin originally? Give me a little bit of how things got started from you. Where are you from?
So originally, I'm from the Chicago area. I grew up in Des Plaines, Illinois. It's one of the suburbs right outside. Like, there was my place, a fence, and then O'Hare Airport. I lived right next to the airport, which is why I can sleep through literally anything now. Yeah, started there, and then slowly started moving my way north from Chicago until I got into Wisconsin. And I've been living in Wisconsin now for about 20 years.
Well, what started your excursion north?
A girl.
Oh, there it is. All right. So when was this? Give me like a bit of a timeline. Like, was this like?
I met. She ended up being my wife. We met when I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
We're together, got married when I was 20. We didn't end up working out long term, but, just realized that there wasn't a ton back for me where I had come from. So I just kind of stayed where I was. Wisconsin's not a terrible place. It was for a little while when Scott Walker was running the state, but now Evers is solid, and I think that we're going to have, fingers crossed, a DSA endorsed governor here soon in Francesca Hong. So.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd be awesome. Yeah, no, that's Wisconsin's such an interesting place because there's all kinds of like union efforts, and then there's that one kind of like pro-union political party that's exclusive to the state. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The name escapes me, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
There was a guy we did a show in Madison, and the bartender who was just working there. He I don't think he knew us, or it was me and Graham Elwood. I don't think he knew us at all or anything like that. But he saw some of the organizations tabling and stuff like that, and he was just like, "Man, I'm so glad you guys are here. This is really cool." And he goes, "I'm part of this," and he said the name of the party, and it's just like a lefty, like pro-union party in Wisconsin that's just like exclusive to the state. And yeah, it was really interesting. It's what I've been talking about it a lot recently. Like kind of, I feel like we all need to reclaim the radical history of the U.S. because I think it's essential in moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, we had socialists all over this state for a long time, back, even before I was around for sure. But, definitely, obviously, as things have gone on with the two-party system, it's made it increasingly harder to see those sorts of wins by people that aren't R or D.
So, what led you to music? Getting back to you, we'll dive into Wisconsin more soon enough. But
Sure, sure.
let's fill
I
in the
mean,
gap
just
first.
always a big fan of music. I grew up listening to started listening to, like, when I was really young, started listening to like 90s R&B stuff. That
Okay.
was kind of where, like, the first, outside of like listening to the stuff that my mom listened to, which was all like disco, which was not a great time. Um but just got into R&B, and then, a friend of mine when I was like 11 turned me on to the alt rock station in town, and I discovered like Nirvana, and was really heavy into Nirvana, in my early teenage years, and then started slowly getting introduced to punk rock. And the first punk song I ever heard, punk song I ever heard, was Chick Magnet by NXPX. It was on 120 Minutes late at night. They had the music video. And, I was like, oh, this is kind of different. And then, because I got into that, I discovered Rancid. And listening to Matt Freeman play bass on Maxwell Murder is literally the reason why I decided that I wanted to be in music. And
Oh
I picked up a bass, started playing a bass. And, over the years, I've, played some bass, played some guitar, but what I do with the first rule is just vocals, so I don't have to worry about anything else, just focusing on, you know, writing words and singing things that, mean something to me.
yeah. Oh man, that Maxwell Murder solo is. I mean, it still gives me a moment. I've seen Rancid. The first time I got to see Rancid, which was honestly a life-changing experience, I was 12 years old. And it just blew my freaking mind. Like I felt like, and it was a Monday night. I really, really pleaded with my parents to let me go. And I remember the next day in school, I felt like I was just in on this secret that nobody knew. You know what I mean? It was just the coolest freaking
Yep.
thing I had ever seen. And I was like, I didn't know this existed. Did you? Because I have a similar origin story too, in that regard, where it's like I got really, really into Nirvana. And then I would literally look at all the t-shirts Kurt Cobain was wearing and try to go out and find those bands. That was like how I started discovering punk rock. I was like, who's Black Flag? Kurt Cobain likes it, so I need to as well. And I got to find this record now. And that was kind of how I started getting into punk. Did you ever have a moment where you wondered if that existed in Chicago, or did you always know it was there?
Well, so for me too, like, one of the things that I had, like, I'm an only child, so I didn't have any siblings to like steal records from or anything like that. But I had a cousin who was into some pretty heavy stuff, listened to like a lot of Typo Negative. But one thing he had is he had one of the Rollins band CDs.
Mm.
And I listened to that, and I was like, Henry Rollins. And so then I looked up, stuff about Henry Rollins, and, got into Black Flag, and got into, the Ramones, and got into the Clash, and some of that older stuff, that informed, the 90s revival that I was, living through at that point, with, No Effects. Like that. No Effects is a huge influence for me. Kind of bummed that they're not together anymore, but 40
Yeah.
years they gave
What do
us.
you
So
what do you think of the whole what do you think of that drama? I haven't been following it super closely, but it's kind of a bummer to see. Like the whole thing with
it's,
Eric Melvin. Have you been following that at all?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, just I've really only heard Mike's side of things. So,
Hmm.
like, I'm not 100% sure where the truth is and all of that, but it's definitely a bummer, considering, like, how do you make it 40 years and then all of a sudden just be like, nah, never mind, I'm good. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me. Like, and they're still putting like out music. Like they're still putting new releases out, at least since they technically split up. So like, what was the point?
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, and I love NoFX too. I mean, I love the music, but NoFX as just a band and just as an entity, they were trolls before we had a word for it. Like they were like
Absolutely.
the OG trolls, and some of the stuff they did was, uh, you know, more. I don't want to say like deceiving or anything like that. Like there was never anything malicious, but some of it was just like kind of trolling everybody, even their own fans. And then others of it was like trolling the powers that be big time. And like I remember one time they threw their pay in small bills into the audience. It was like a day at Warped Tour, and they were kind of like, man, the sound's really shitty because of the weather, and we know that sometimes these outdoor festivals can just be really rough for you guys. So we're just going to take what we got paid today, and we're just going to give it to you. And they just started throwing money in the audience. I mean, so they've always been like just I don't know, like they've always been pranksters. So I wouldn't be surprised if they played again. But the whole thing with Eric Melvin, I've only been paying attention a little bit as well. I did read what Eric Melvin posted, where he said that it was not. He was like, I did not accuse Fat Mike of being a thief. I didn't do anything like this. I just sent him a letter, asking for certain behavior to stop. He didn't go into detail what that meant. And then he said, and that he wanted to see certain like financial records or something, and just wanted to go about it via a formal way. Which I can kind of understand that, like it's business. There's millions of dollars at stake at this point. They've all done very well for themselves. So I can kind of see like just like, hey, if there's like a formal business thing that really needs to be taken care of, let's just let the professionals take care of it. Even if it's,
Right.
but I don't know. Like there's still like, why did he present a letter like right after the last show? Yeah, like there's some, I don't know.
Well,
It's bad. I don't
the
have, you know.
the thing that's weird about it to me is one of the things that Mike had said that I had read was, something to the effect of, I wanted to hang it up, 15 years ago, but I kept playing so these guys could make money,
Mhm.
and that also kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it's like, dude, you're making money too. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong. Like, you've never really struck me as a super altruistic type of person, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, you have the things that you believe, and, I believe a lot of the same things, but, don't act like you weren't getting something out of it too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair analysis. It's yeah. I mean, it's sad to see, and so you got into music, you started discovering punk rock, and you picked up a bass after you heard Maxwell Murder. Um, when did you decide to start playing? Like how did the first rules start?
So the previous girl I had mentioned, after we had split up,
Always a girl with
well,
you. I'm noticing a trend.
well,
There's always a girl.
this one's the same girl,
All
but
right.
it, it, you know, for without being too, trashy about, somebody that I'm not with anymore. It was not a great relationship. We didn't treat each other very well, like you do when you're, 15, 16, 20 years old. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're too focused on yourself. And, part of that was I didn't play music for almost the entirety of our relationship. Like, I was in a band and I left that band when I decided to move north, and didn't play music again until the first rule started. And how that ended up happening is I was delivering pizzas, and one of the guys that I deliver pizzas with, I found out he did like acoustic rock. And I said, hey, you want to jam sometime? I got some lyrics. One of the times, in my past, when I had been homeless, I had sold all of my instruments. So I didn't have anything to write music on. So I just kept writing lyrics. So I had like dozens and dozens of lyric sheets. And I was like, hey, you want to write some music for this? And the first 4 songs for the first rule were all done just by him and I trading emails with each other.
Oh, wow.
So, like, I would send him lyrics, and then he would send me back, you know, a demo with my lyrics and music he wrote. And, you know, like I said, we managed to get 4 songs done that way. And, you know, it wasn't really going to be anything, but we decided to enter a local radio contest with one of the songs. And there were supposed to be 3 rounds of this contest. The first round was just like a Facebook vote thing, and we managed to get to the second round off of that. And the third round was a performance round, and we didn't have a band. So we were like, hey, we should probably find some musicians to do this thing with us. We didn't end up making it to the third round, but because of that, we did end up with a full band. And, you know, that's kind of how the band started there.
So when did homelessness creep its way into everything?
So
that post
I've been homeless 2 different times in my life. The first time was after I had split up with that girl. She was seeing somebody else after we had split up, after, you know, the marriage had ended. And I was still technically living there. So I decided that I just needed to leave, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. So I lived in my car, you know, and luckily I was employed at that time. So, like, some nights I was able to pay for a hotel room. Some nights I was like, I need gas because I have work tomorrow. So I would put gas in my car. Some nights I would be able to eat and put gas in my car. And on the good nights, you know, when I made, you know, triple digits, I was able to get a hotel room, food, and gas.
Mm.
But
Well, so
that was right before the band. I would say probably 2014.
okay. And what were you doing for work at the time?
Just delivering pizzas. I did that
Oh,
for a really
that
long
was
time.
during the
That's
delivering pizzas era. Okay. Okay.
Yep, you
Gotcha.
got it. And I was, you know, rolled. Luckily, because I was employed, I was able to get myself out of that spot. You know, I know
Mhm.
there's plenty of people out there that aren't able to do that. I was lucky enough to be able to work my way out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's so crazy. It's like anybody can find themselves in that situation because it's like to get an apartment now. It's like, oh, you need first month and last month and a deposit. And yeah, here's another fee just because we feel like it. And it's just like housing is just getting more and more unattainable. It's freaking nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even, you know, I recently, you know, moved from one place to another just in the town that I live in, and the amount of money and resources that it took to just move from one side of town to the other is insane, let alone, you know, somebody trying to make a real move where they're moving to a whole nother city or a whole nother state, or, you know, even more country.
Yeah. No, it's why I mean moving. I've moved a fair amount in my life, and yeah, it's a cluster, man. It's a cluster, and it always has been. But yeah, it just keeps getting more and more wild. Well, so when did you find your way to lefty politics?
That's a very good question. I'd like to say, you know, I mean, I grew up in a family that didn't really talk a lot about politics. You know, most of my family, now that I'm an adult, I realize is right wing. But the person that I was closest to in my family growing up was my grandfather, and he was a union Democrat. Like, he always voted Democrat. You know, he was part of a union. He worked for NBC for like 30 years as the head of building maintenance in Chicago, and you know, he just was always Democrat. And I would, you know, when I was younger, I distinctly remember 1992 when Bill Clinton won the election, and I had asked my grandfather, said, "Who'd you vote for?" He goes, "Well, I'm not going to tell you who I voted for, but I didn't vote Republican." And I said, "Okay." I mean, I guess that with Ross Perot being around that year, I guess there was a little room to guess, but, you know, I knew he voted for Clinton, although, you know, obviously, given what Clinton was to politics in
Yeah,
general, probably not the best vote he ever made, but, you know,
no,
given the
but
choices.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to American politics. Yeah.
But anyway, to going back to the original question, I honestly probably like really got like really focused on it in 2015, like a lot of people with Bernie, you know, because I liked Obama. I voted for Obama, twice, but he, obviously governed like it was 1985 and he was Republican.
Yeah.
Um, and that sucked. And that kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth. And then came Bernie, and I was just like, oh man, that's the guy. And, obviously we know how that happened. But yeah, I've been, just really dying for information, ever since then, and really focusing on things, and just coming to the realization that I don't even necessarily think that I'm quote unquote a leftist. I mean, obviously, given a lot of the things in my songs and stuff like that, it's pretty obvious that I am a leftist. However, a lot of the things that I care about are, in my opinion, just common sense stuff. Like, be good to people. Don't be an asshole. One time I had someone, a Republican friend of mine, tell me, I just want to raise my kids, to not be assholes. And I thought to myself, that's good, but I think you should really more try and raise your kids to be good people, not just not be an asshole, because you can not be an asshole and still be a terrible person. So just in general, 2015 was my awakening. Like a lot of people focused on leftist politics these days. I got into, Bernie, and then started watching TYT, and back before they are doing whatever the hell they're doing now. And you got into people like Kyle Kalinske, and got into Jimmy Dore again, and that's how I found you in the first place, was back when you were working with Jimmy. I tell people that some of the guys in the band, they aren't as in the weeds as I am. And they were asking me questions about you, and I said, oh, he wrote all of Jimmy Dore's jokes back before he stopped being funny.
Oh, your words, sir. Your words.
Hey, man, come after me. I'm nobody, Jimmy. Feel free.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was, it was just a much different show during that era, and it's, obviously the direction it went in wasn't one I went in, and that's why I quit. But it's kind of weird to think about how that space used to be, just as a whole, not even just that show, but just how that space used to be versus how it is now. But
Agreed.
what can you do? I mean, all you can do is just pick up the pieces and try to figure out what's next and try again.
Yeah.
But so I want to talk a little bit about Kenosha, because that's where you're at, right?
So the band is based in Kenosha.
Okay.
That's where I was for a really long time. I moved about 5 years ago further north. Now I'm in Oshkosh, but the band is still based in Kenosha. We still practice there. But you do anything, we've been together since 2015. You do anything for 11 years and things are going to change. So like I've moved, like there's only one person in the band that actually lives in Kenosha proper now. But I left shortly after the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff happened.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. So what was it like being there for that? I mean, like what was just the vibe? Like how did the city respond? Like walk me through it as someone who was there.
It was something else. It was weird, to be completely honest with you. And I actually that entire thing kind of changed my relationship with social media, because I used to be a lot more online than I am now. But it was really hard to watch people from all over the country and all over the world talk about, the place that I lived, and have just some insane takes on things. And it just really made me kind of step off social media for a little bit because I couldn't handle it, if I'm being honest with you. But, as far as like what it was crazy to watch. You'd see stuff, and I wanted to go out and protest. My wife begged me not to. And, given what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse, maybe she was, right. Maybe it was good that I stayed home. But to the next morning, first of all, to have to close your businesses down, because there's things happening like that all around you and buildings burning down. And, having the National Guard at every exit on the highway. I left work one of those nights, and it took me an extra 35 minutes to go home because I had to drive down into Illinois to get off of the highway because they had every exit blocked with National Guardsmen. And, we can debate on whether or not sending in the National Guard was the right or wrong thing to do. Obviously, I don't know what decision I would have made if I was the governor at that point, but it was a pretty insane time. It was very insane to watch. I know a lot of people who, were out there. I know a lot of people who I know one of the people that had to defend Kyle Rittenhouse in court. And, just to see what that sort of unrest does to a community is pretty crazy. You drive down one way and you see, oh, that building's gone now. And you drive, you make a turn and, oh, that building's also gone. And it's never an easy thing to deal with anywhere. I wasn't around, I wasn't in Minneapolis, in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd or any of those things. But, I got a taste of what it was like, and it was hard. It was hard to deal with. It was hard to watch, and like I said, it was hard to watch people, talk negatively about a place that I genuinely love. I love Kenosha. Just because I don't live there, it's still one of my favorite places I've ever lived. There's so many good things going on for that city. I mean, it has probably a music scene, surprisingly for such a small place, a music scene that's, right up there with anywhere in the country, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, they have their own kind of like there's a thing called Kino core. It's
Okay.
it's a punk rock. It's a style of punk. It's like hardcore punk, but it's all, it's got roots in Kenosha, and it's been going on for like 25, 30 years now, and, just see the microcosm of, like there's this city that I know that, and then what is being portrayed, it was just crazy. Honestly.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because I'm curious because, and maybe this is just like my own blinders because I don't live there, but I never saw anybody being disparaging of the town itself. So like what kind of things?
It was honestly
paint a picture for me.
So it was. I just saw people. It ended up being a lot of like, the people who refused to believe that there were outside agitators coming in, and those people just being like, nah, it's all these people. They're all fucking crazy. They're all terrible, and obviously either side, and we got it from both sides, honestly, because of Kyle Rittenhouse. He was, obviously, a righty, or maybe he wasn't at that time. I mean, it was the weirdest thing in the world, to be completely honest with you, was waking up the next day and realizing I had mutual Facebook friends with that dude.
Oh, no shit.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Jeez. I was like, oh, that's a thing. That's crazy.
What
and then
their take on it?
Honestly, didn't really talk to him much after that.
Yeah, I don't,
probably on me, but given how I was feeling at the time, and I was just so raw about everything, and I just didn't want to hear another, because it's the person that I have was mutual friends was not, someone from Kenosha. So like it was one of those things where, I kind of just shut everything down for a period of weeks after that. And then, this person and I drifted apart anyway, and probably would have happened just, I hate how polarized things are, but I'm guilty of it too. There are some people that I just don't want to talk to, man. I just am not interested. There's people out there. I will engage in conversation with anybody on the right if I feel like it's in good faith, and that I'm not going to spend 45 minutes getting screamed at by somebody who doesn't really understand what's happening. And I'm not saying that's all right wingers. There are plenty of right wingers out there who do know what's going on, and they are smart enough to understand what's happening. The difference is that they cheer it on, they accept it, they want it to happen. I don't. I wish that I would have taken the opportunity to pick his brain, but I did down the road pick the brain of the person who had to represent him in court, and found out some very interesting things that, it's just, it was a crazy time in history in the city that I lived in.
Spill the tea. What'd you find out?
Oh, I was told he was just not a very smart dude. Like really, really,
that's not
like
necessarily groundbreaking, Nick.
Like seventh grade education, maybe.
That's probably being generous.
Yeah. No, and I know, but it's one thing, because obviously I've never met the dude. It's one thing to hear him talk. I mean, I do think that he has a level of self-awareness, because like if you ever seen the interview he did with Ted Nugent, where Ted Nugent starts talking crazy racist shit about Obama, and Kyle Rittenhouse is just looking at him like, okay.
No, but that
so that sort of thing tells me, like, dude knows, but he also knows where his money is, and that's the worst part, because like, to have somebody like that who could come out and say, you know what, man, it was a fucked up situation. What I did was wrong. That's never going to happen, because especially now, I mean, he's on like the board of like Second Amendment things, and, all of these things. Like, that's not something, even if he thinks it in his head, is something that he's ever going to vocalize.
Right. Yeah. No, he knows where his bread is buttered, and he's been, because he has just embraced and accepted this right-wing celebrity, he can never really pivot away from it. I mean, technically he could. There's always the United States loves a freaking comeback story, and the United States loves, like he could at some point just totally pivot and just, kind of do like a tell-all, but yeah, he's not going to. That would cost him
I feel like if that was something that he was interested in doing, he would have done it already. Like,
exactly.
To be completely honest, I don't blame the dude for trying to make his money. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who make money hurting people.
Sure.
I mean, doesn't make it right, and that's not saying that I agree with it, but it's not something I don't understand.
Right. Yeah. No, I get why somebody would do that, especially since it's like he has the moral compass to do what he did in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's just like, Correct. Of course he's gonna, he doesn't feel like he's in the wrong. So of course he's gonna run with that celebrity. You're gonna kind of you're gonna stroke the egos of those who agree with you and are making you a hero, which is like so freaking sick. I mean, my take on the whole thing was just like, yeah, that dude should be in jail. Like he shot a guy who was unarmed 4 times. And I get it. That guy was out of his mind. I do get that part of it. But it's like, you didn't have to shoot that guy 4 times, executioner style. You did not have to do that. And then, like when people are like, well, he had to defend himself. It's like, dude, when somebody opens fire at a protest, I mean, people's response to that, it really separated who has never been to a protest before and who has. Because when somebody opens fire at a protest, the job becomes you have to disarm that person. Yep. That's what people do. So people that were wagging their finger at like the skateboard guy saying he attacked him, I'm like, the skateboard guy was trying to disarm him. He was going after the gun. That guy's a freaking
Yep.
hero. Like, and the people sanitizing that. I mean, honestly, it's part of the reason. I mean, it was one of the reasons I quit the Jimmy Dore show, to tell you the truth. I mean, him and I got in a shouting, not on air, but off air. I mean, him and I got in a shouting match about Kyle Rittenhouse. So,
That's crazy. Yeah,
yeah.
it's crazy too, because like all of the just all of those people that were just trying to get his gun away from him, and like it wasn't like he wasn't even, I don't even necessarily think he was quote unquote defending himself. He just lost his cool, man. He
Yeah.
freaked out,
Yeah.
because anybody who actually has respect for a firearm doesn't just fucking spray bullets wildly.
Right. Right. Or
Regardless
shooting
of
an
the
unarmed person 4
circumstances.
times.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just absolutely freaking nuts. I mean, look, I don't agree with everything Stephen Colbert says, especially over recent years, but I thought he summed it up the best way when he just said, if this kid didn't violate any laws, then the laws need to change.
Yep.
Like if this kid is in violation of no law, and by the way, adult, I shouldn't even say kid, adult, if this adult was in violation of no laws, the laws need to freaking change. And that's just the truth.
One of the things that that person that I know that represented him said to me was that if they would have not gone after a murder charge, he'd be in jail. If they would have gone for a lesser charge, she believes that he'd be in jail.
Oh, I mean, they should have then. I mean, yeah, like they totally should have, because you could have.
It was,
Like,
and I don't know how much. I don't know how much you remember about the actual trial, but like that judge loved this kid, was dying to get this kid out of court, was dying to make sure that this didn't quote unquote ruin his life. Like it was not, it's one of the craziest, like, when you go through things like that, you hope for like an impartial jury, an impartial judge. It was the craziest thing, because this judge was so very obviously in this kid's corner. There was no shot. They had no shot, unfortunately. And it was something that, I still think about, like the fact that, having somebody who was actually a part of it say, yeah, man, like if they wouldn't have overcharged, he'd probably be in jail.
I mean, it just makes you feel like the whole thing was just a complete kangaroo court, which it was, which it totally was. And it's, yeah, it is just, it's really an ugly, ugly statement on our contemporary society. The fact that this guy is able to go and do what he did and then is celebrated for it.
Mm-hmm.
He's celebrated for killing 2 people and wounding a third. And then they did character assassinations on the third guy, which, yeah, maybe he had some not so great things in his past. Okay, so what? It's not freaking relevant. In that case, he was trying to disarm somebody who was killing people at a protest. That's literally what you're supposed to do. I mean,
well, that's the whole game right there, is, character assassination. So people don't care that this was a life. They don't want people to care that this was a person who had feelings and had a life. They just want people. They want people to go, oh, well, he obviously deserved it, right? He was such a terrible person that he fucking deserved to get shot. And there's people out there who believe that, trying to have conversations about things like the death penalty with people like that is insane, because being where I am, I'm not a person who believes in the death penalty, for any reason. And part of the biggest reason that I don't believe in the death penalty, I mean, are there people who probably should be away from society? Absolutely.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we get to fucking kill them, man. Like that's not for us, and the fact that we, you know, execute innocent people 4% of the time. Until that number is zero, I'll never, I don't care
Right.
what the fuck they did. I will never agree that, taking somebody's life is a just punishment when we get it wrong so often.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, if we're being like brutally honest, are there situations where you look at, what somebody has done and you think this person does not deserve to be alive? Yeah, I have those moments. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly do. Like when you see people that have just done horrible, horrible things, and you're just like, yeah, I don't think this person should be alive. But in our justice system, where there's so many, like false guilty verdicts and stuff like that, I would never get behind something like the death penalty ever. Like
Mm-hmm.
so it's just like that right there, full stop. And even still, even having those feelings, it's like, well, I would rather see them pay for their crime in, like some kind of carceral situation. Although our prison system is also a freaking train wreck too. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
sort of
yeah.
like
Well,
there's no winning.
we need a lot of things,
We need a
top to
lot of
bottom. I
things.
mean,
Yeah. So
the
well let's get it back to the music some. So
sure.
well, what is it like? I mean, just when was it sort of decided? Because y'all brand yourself as I forget the exact slogan, but is like Wisconsin's only leftist, maybe Wisconsin's only leftist pop punk band or something like that. Um, so what was when was that decided? Like, did y'all talk about that, or did y'all just kind of like realize you shared those sentiments? Or
So here's a funny story about that. We actually just lost a guitarist. He was a Republican, and he like joined the band maybe like 3 years ago. And like at that point, we had a song called Dictator that we released when Trump was in office. You know, we have a song called One Man Revolution that I basically just took Bernie's 2015 platform and wrote it into a song.
mm-hmm.
Just all of these very, very lefty things. And he was just like, I don't view it that way. I view it more anti-government. Okay, well, I'm sorry that you didn't get it, but like it's pretty obvious to anybody who's paying close attention. And finally, the thing that broke the camel's back with him being in the band, because we weren't going to kick him out, necessarily, but it definitely wasn't something he disclosed to us when he joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
And as the Trump, one administration, came and went, and then Biden came in, and then the next election happened where, Trump got back. I realized he was a Republican when he told me we were talking about Doge, and he goes, maybe Vivek and Elon, maybe they got something going on there, maybe.
Oh
And
no.
I was like, no, dude, no, that's not, no, sorry. And finally he came to me and he's like, dude, I just got to tell you, I can't handle all the shit that gets talked at practice. It's too much. I can't handle it. And I was like,
Well, at least he's
dude,
being honest.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't probably as nice as I should have been about it, if I'm being honest with you.
Well,
Because it just didn't make any sense to me. Because it like
mhm.
obviously I wrote a lot of these lyrics, so like to me it's super clear what I'm
Sure.
trying to say. It does surprise me a little bit that it doesn't come off that way to everybody. Um, but we had this thing, and so like, but to answer the question, going back to your original question, it wasn't really necessarily something that we talked about. But when I started writing songs, that were very heavily political, And everybody in the band was like, yeah, man, right on. It was just kind of obvious at that point that we were all in agreement. And, the leftist thing that I label us with is, really just so something like that doesn't happen again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just plant the flag. No, I feel you, man. I mean, my new stand-up show is called Anti-Fascist Pasta Night. So I'm just making it clear. There'll be no ambiguity here. Yeah, no, I feel you. I think that's well, so is the new did you put out an ad for a new guitarist and said
we reached out to somebody that we knew aligned with our feelings on things, and he stepped in and played his first show with us last month. So nice. Pretty good, still working, gonna start working on some new music with him here as well, so really excited about being able to get some new stuff together.
Do you think that, like, punk rock as a whole, and I know it's like varied, but do you think it's definitely more lefty now than it has been in more recent years? Because I feel like you could argue it was a little more apolitical in the 90s, comparatively speaking. Some of it, not all of it, obviously, but it was maybe as a whole a little more apolitical. And I feel like we're getting into a more, I mean, especially when you look at like the backlash with the Punk in the Park guy and shit like that.
Yep.
I feel like we're getting more into like a more political era again, as we should. But would you agree with that, or do you see that, or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's, for me, I didn't really think as much about it. I mean, like, there were some, songs poking at the government in the 90s, like NoFX had Perfect Government and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of those, I mean, outside of like Bad Religion,
Sure.
a lot of those bands, like, it's not like, I mean, obviously going back to before they became what they are now, but like the first couple of Offspring albums, super, super hard, super edgy, super punk, and almost no politics among the first like 3 albums,
Mm-hmm.
So like, and then like same thing with like Green Day, like their first few albums, not a lot of political stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously George Bush gets into office and they put out American Idiot, and it's basically been nonstop politics for them ever since.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'll give credit where it's due. I mean, they took a hit, back in the post 9/11 era when you couldn't say anything bad about the U.S. They took a hit along with like the Dixie Chicks and stuff like
Yep.
that. I mean, that was part of the reason why they had that little dip pre-American Idiot, because, like, Billy Joe straight up was against doing, and he put out statement. He's like, please do not, like, we should not be attacking Iraq. This is not, like, I know 9/11 was a terrible thing that happened, but this is not like he kind of said it. So they took a hit the same way like the Dixie Chicks did and stuff like that. And all the people that ended up being 100% right. But yeah.
Yep. Well, and it was, I mean, the Dixie Chicks are even more like, I fuck with them so hard because of that entire era. Like,
Yeah.
because like on top of it, like, it's one thing for Green Day to do some political stuff as a punk band, but for a country group to come out when everything that was coming out at that time was like, we're America, we're gonna kick your ass,
Yeah.
and like for every other country song to be like that for like 12 years straight, and for them to be like, nah, man, this is not right, this is not okay, what we're doing is wrong. And then to get, I mean, they never recovered, I mean,
No.
and it's unfortunate because they're all incredibly talented musicians and very good songwriters,
Yeah.
and probably deserved a hell of a lot more than they achieved because they were willing to just do the minimum.
Yeah.
It's not like they went over the top. They literally just said, hey man, this is wrong. That's the minimum. That's the least you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, that was just such a hyper nationalistic time, even more so than usual, which is always a very. I mean, I've always said this. I'm like, I don't know if the United States is the most nationalistic country in the world, but I can tell you that if there's one more nationalistic out there, I never want to go there. That's what I can
You
tell you.
are you
Like,
are correct, my friend.
it's the most nationalist I've ever been to. I can tell you that much. And if there is one more so out there, I have no desire to ever step foot in that place, wherever it is. But yeah. Well, so in closing, I want to ask you something a little philosophical. As a musician, what does it mean to you to be creatively fulfilled? And are you?
I honestly, I think it's just, for me personally, it's just about making sure that I have the outlet of making music and being able to get it in front of other people to listen to. I'm not, we're not like, touring nationally. We pretty much stick to the Midwest. Not saying we wouldn't go somewhere else if we thought it would be, a good time, or, whatever, or if even just given the offer. We don't get a ton of offers to go out west, or east. But, as far as like, yeah, I mean, I think I'm creatively fulfilled just because I'm able to do that. Like, one time I had somebody say to me, I was working sound with some production company, and one of the other guys that I was working with for the day, he's in another band. We knew each other, had played some shows together and stuff like that. And we started talking about our respective bands, and I said to him, well, I mean, we're all older, we got our jobs and kids, we have a teacher in the band, I work, I run a restaurant, all these different professions. We still come together to make the band, but I don't think we're ever gonna, quote unquote, make it. And his response to me was, do you play shows? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you fucking made it.
Yeah.
And I said, holy shit, that completely changed the way that I looked at being a musician, and really just made me think, you know what, man, that's what it's about. It's just about being able to play music in front of other people, so anytime I'm doing that, I am creatively fulfilled, man.
I love it. Well, tell people where they can go to listen to The First Rule. Where can they find you all?
We're on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, all that jazz. We got all the usual social media, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a Blue Sky. We don't use Twitter anymore for obvious reasons. But yeah, man, we got we got a few shows booked coming up. We're playing May 23rd in Harvard, Illinois. And then we're playing in Kenosha June 12th. And those are the only shows we got on the books currently, because like I said, we're starting to put together some new music. So hopefully going to be putting out a new album, maybe fall, winter.
Well, Nick, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It was really good talking to you, man.
That was Nick O'Malley. Check out his band. Check out The First Rule. And if you are in one of the towns they're coming to, check them out. Go check them out on the road. I hope to get to catch them live one of these days. Music for the 1000 Podcast is provided by Andrew Saxonov. Be sure to check out his podcast, The Bay Watching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a review. Make sure you are subscribed, especially if you get this show on YouTube, because YouTube unsubscribes people all the time. And if you want to support this show on the sustainability and patreon.com/Ron Placone for a give what you can level, you get all kinds of cool perks. You get full stand-up clips not available anywhere else. I do a couple Zoom patrons only shows over on Zoom. So that's another cool perk. And also we do a Zoom hangout once a month. So we got a really cool community going over on Patreon, and that's all for a give what you can level. All right, we have reached another decade. We are at 140. We are at the original Twitter character length. This was the original. 140 characters was the limit on Twitter before it became an infestation of Nazis and porn bots. And yeah, I mean, I still use it. There are still some people over there But man, what is sad. I mean, it was never perfect, but it just got so much worse. Anyway, you get it. Another decade. We're moving along. 140. Catch you next week. Peace.